Hi there. I'm going to talk about our paper, Perception of Line Attributes for Visualization, in this video. Recently, we were working on a visualization in which we wanted to use line attributes to convey information. There are many different line attributes to choose, so we wondered which one to pick. This is not only a problem in this specific scenario. Lines as graphical primitives are everywhere, and in many visualizations, the line attributes are used to convey information. In our work, we investigated the perception of line attributes in 3 studies. Our first goal was to determine popular line attributes that are intuitively used by people. In most of the papers we found there was no empirical justification for using a particular line attribute. We decided to use an open approach to determine popular ones. In a drawing study, participants drew lines to encode uncertainty. We selected the most widely used line attributes for our further evaluations. In the second part of our work, we investigated discriminability. We calculated the J and D and determined level recommendations. In the last study, we validated these level recommendations in ranking tasks. So, for our first study, we had to select scenarios for the drawing tasks. We chose uncertainty visualization. The participants of our study are non-experts, but people are familiar with uncertainty in their daily life. There are bus and train timetables, weather forecasts, and so on. The topic is familiar. Additionally, uncertainty visualization is an active topic in the visualization community. For our experiment, we designed 8 tasks. Each task featured a scenario with several levels of uncertainty. The participants had to add lines to provided graphics to encode uncertainty. We had 18 participants in this study. Each one drew an image for every task. On this slide, I provide some sample submissions. We selected 7 categories for classifying the line drawings. One drawing could be counted in several categories if more than one line attribute was used. Our most important takeaway from this study were the most commonly used line attributes. Dashing was by far the most popular, with 113 images including dashed lines. There were many different varieties of dashing used. Often dashing would be used as a single category. Other examples were dots and dashes or growing dashes. On this slide, I have some examples for the images we classified as other. Most of them were submitted for the map or the blood vessel task. Some participants added question marks, others multiple possible paths or probable areas in which the true line could be. In this study, we determined the just noticeable differences, J and D for short. The J and D is the smallest change in a stimulus that a person can detect reliably. With this study, we tried to answer the questions: how many levels can be distinguished? And is the number similar for different attributes, or is some attribute clearly easier to distinguish? We selected the most commonly used line attributes from our drawing study: dashing, luminance, waves, and width. Because of the high variability in dashing in the drawing study, we introduced 2 types of dashing: dashing async and dashing sync. For dashing async, the dashes and gaps grow asynchronously. The total size of gap and dash stays constant. For dashing sync, the dashes and gaps grow synchronously. In this graphic, you can see the minimum, maximum, and one in-between level for each attribute that we tested. To determine the J and D for the line attributes, we used a method of constant stimuli. Here's an example. 2 stimuli are shown side by side, and the participant had to select a stimulus. In this example, the line with the bigger amplitude had to be selected. The images were shown for 200 milliseconds only. Our reasoning was that we want the people to quickly detect differences. When the lines are used in visualizations, the overall image is drastically more complex than 2 individual lines. The viewers should not need to analyze both lines in detail to come to an answer. For this study, we recruited 20 participants. Each participant had to do 1,200 tasks. For each line attribute, we calculated the J and D at 4 levels. This way, we got an impression on how the perception changes over a wider stimuli range. On this slide, you can see our results. The subfigures show the different line attributes. The J and D are plotted on the y-axis, the attribute levels on the x-axis. The J and D are shown as black dots with confidence intervals. Now, to generate the level recommendations, we need to interpolate between the data values. Our first choice of interpolation method would be Weber's law. It states that the ratio between the J and D and the stimulus intensity is constant. Interpolations based on Weber's law are displayed as blue dotted lines. Unfortunately, in none of the cases Weber's law could be applied directly. For width, apart from the first data point, the J and D were well approximated by Weber's law. For the other line types, Weber's law was not a good approximation. Next, we tried to fit linear models to the data. The linear models are shown with red dashes. This worked well for dashing sync and waves. For dashing async and luminance, we had to linearly interpolate between 4 sample points to get reasonably good approximations. Then, with the interpolations, we extracted our just distinguishable line levels. These are our level recommendations. As you can clearly see, we found by far the most levels for width, followed by waves. Both types of dashing have the same number of levels, luminance has the least. In our last study, we validated the level recommendations. The participants were presented with an unordered sequence of levels. They had to sort them into correct order per drag and drop. The annotations here were of course not present in the original tasks. 54 participants participated. The participants performed very well in this task. Our level recommendations therefore seem to work. Next, I will discuss our findings and their limitations. In our drawing study, we found popular line attributes for drawing uncertainty. These are line attributes that the participants used intuitively for drawing uncertainty. However, intuitiveness alone was probably not the only deciding factor for using a line attribute. As the participants had to draw the lines, ease of drawing probably was another factor. Other attributes might also be intuitive. A top-down approach of searching the literature for line attributes commonly used by researchers and practitioners could complement our results. The line attributes we found specifically apply to uncertainty visualization. In other contexts, the results might differ. Our results can now be used to make more informed choices on which line attributes to use for encoding data and visualizations. For example, appropriate levels with similar perceptual distances can be picked for encoding different data levels. Additionally, if data is divided into more bins, one should choose an attribute that has good discriminability, such as width. I want to note though, our J&D study was conducted under good conditions. The lighting and the distance to the screen was controlled, and the only task was the comparison of the lines. In less favorable circumstances, the discriminability is probably worse. However, our results serve as a baseline. Based on the intended conditions for viewing the visualization, the levels should be adapted. Furthermore, we evaluated the J&D at 4 levels for each line attribute. Therefore, the interpolation accuracy is limited in some cases. This is especially true for the asynchronous dashing. As you can see in the picture, there seems to be a maximum around the dash length of 26.7 pixel. However, we do not know the exact location of this maximum. The interpolated J&D values around this point are therefore probably not very accurate. Future evaluations should focus on interesting areas like these. The interpolation for the other line attributes should be better. They all seem to be growing monotonously. To conclude, we conducted 3 studies to investigate the perception of line attributes for data encoding. We found that the most popular line attributes for uncertainty encoding are dashing, width, luminance, and waves. For these line variables, we derived level recommendations based on the just noticeable differences. The recommendations can now be used to choose suitable line levels. We hope that our work helps in making more informed decisions for line-based visualizations. Thank you for listening.